Rejection is that gut-wrenching moment when someone just ignores you, and the value you thought you had suddenly disappears. It hits you hard and fast, like a punch to the stomach, and it stings like crazy. But it's not just a quick blow. It leaves a mark that lingers long after you hear the no or see the door slam shut. We've all been there when we poured out our hearts, gave our loyalty, and spent our time with someone, standing by them through their tough times, thinking we meant something to them, only to be tossed aside like we didn't matter at all. And it really hurts. It burns deep inside. No one can see you trying to brush it off, but inside, it feels like you're carrying a heavy load you just can't drop. They treated us like we were just an option, something they could swap out whenever it suited them, and then forget about us when we weren't needed anymore. They made us feel small and unimportant, like who we are just wasn't enough. You keep replaying every memory, every time you were there for them. You remember how you stuck around when they were lost, broken, or just needed someone to listen. You gave parts of yourself, thinking it actually mattered. It mattered, but when it was time for them to be there for you, they vanished. It broke my heart to see them walk away like it was no big deal, like you meant nothing. All those memories, the promises, the trust, it was all just trash to them. They didn't even glance back while you stood there, feeling completely crushed, trying to understand how someone could be so cold. And maybe the cruelest part isn't that they left, but how they did it, just disappearing without a word. Closure can be tough, especially when someone leaves you to deal with the mess they created. They made you doubt your worth, your value, and even your existence. It's hard to believe that someone you cared about so much could just throw you away like that. But here's the real deal. They don't want you to see the truth. Their rejection had nothing to do with your worth. It was about their own inability to recognize something genuine. They don't miss you, and chances are they never will. Not because you weren't enough, but because they never had the depth to appreciate you in the first place. So why are you sitting there, tearing yourself up over someone who's already moved on without a second thought? Why are you losing sleep, crying, and questioning your whole existence for someone who didn't even care enough to stick around? They're not thinking about you. They're not haunted by memories or drowning in regret. They're out there living their life while you're stuck replaying everything that went wrong. Wake up. I know it hurts. I know you want to cry, scream, and fall apart. I get that hollow ache in your chest feels unbearable. You might never feel completely okay again, but just take a moment to open your eyes and listen. They want you to be upset. They expect you to fall apart. Isn't that what rejection does? Isn't that what people mean when they say it's predictable, even unattractive? They walked away thinking you'd just fall apart, stuck in that sad cycle of despair, just another victim of a heart they never cared to appreciate. But here's the thing, you can change that narrative. You don't have to be the person they think you are. You're not just some tragic story they left behind. You don't have to sit around in the dark, waiting for closure or hoping for answers that will never come. Crying over someone who tossed you aside isn't healing. It's giving them power. It's living exactly how they want you to, feeling small and forgotten. Maybe they even enjoy knowing you're still stuck, still thinking about them, still missing them. Don't give them that satisfaction. So today, we're not just talking about rejection. We're facing it head-on and uncovering those hidden feelings that keep you tied to the past. Don't let your future get messed up. The worst things we do after getting rejected aren't always clear. They're sneaky, quiet confidence killers that can steal your joy and stop your progress. But realizing this is the first step to getting your power back. You can't fix what you ignore. So today, let's talk about those harmful habits, starting with the most dangerous one, silence. This isn't the end for you. It's just the start. But first, you need to confront what's holding you back. Now, let's move on to today's affirmation. Join me for today's affirmation. Let's say it together. I refuse to break. Say it loud and proud, and really believe it with all your heart. Don't keep this strength to yourself. You care about others who are facing the same struggles, rejections, and heartbreaks. Write it in the comments and let them know they're not alone. Show them we rise together. Remind someone out there who feels broken that their story isn't over. Be that voice of strength for them. If you're looking for a reason to keep pushing through, just drop it in the comments. Simple as that. Just say, I refuse to break. And while you're at it, hit that like button. It helps get this message out to more folks who really need it. People searching for strength when they feel like they've lost everything. All right, let's dive in. First up, silence and overthinking. Silence can be powerful in some stories. It stirs up longing, mystery, and even desire, if there's still a spark there. But when someone has already turned you down, they've already moved on. Silence turns into something else. It becomes your prison. It's that endless emptiness where you're stuck alone, going over every word, every action, and every mistake, trying to figure out why they left. Their silence isn't mysterious, it's final. The longer you stay in it, the louder it gets. I know what you're thinking. Maybe if I stay quiet, they'll miss me. Maybe they'll notice I'm gone. Maybe they'll see what they've lost. But they won't. Their silence isn't a test or anything like that. A mind game is just that. It's a choice. And the worst part is that it ended a while ago. The silence after being rejected feels like being stuck in a dark room with no escape. You sit there, frozen by memories, thinking that if you just wait long enough, they'll come back to you. You end up being your own jailer, trapping yourself by clinging to someone who moved on ages ago. Every moment of silence hits like another rejection, another sign that they don't care enough to get in touch. You keep telling yourself that. Maybe, just maybe, they're still thinking about you, but deep down, you know they're not, and that's the hardest truth to accept. Think about it. How many times have you stared at your phone, hoping for a message that never showed up? How many sleepless nights have you spent imagining them missing you, only to wake up to nothing? That's what silence does. It creates false hope and keeps you stuck in the illusion that you still matter to someone who's already moved on. But here's something they don't want you to see. You don't need that. They kept you waiting in silence for their words to set you free. But the key to that prison was always in your hands, not theirs. Their silence doesn't determine your worth. It just shows how little they care and their choice to move on. It's harsh, but it's the reality. Just look at some of the most famous stories of resilience, like J.K. Rowling, who faced rejection and silence, but didn't let it defeat her. She got turned down by 12 publishers, one after another, with nothing but silence and rejection. She could have let that silence kill her dreams, but she didn't. Today, she's one of the most successful authors ever because she decided to take action instead of waiting for someone to validate her. Then there's Oprah Winfrey, who was told she wasn't cut out for TV. Can you imagine how that felt? Being tossed aside in an industry full of rejection. But instead of going quiet, she went on to build one of the most powerful media empires the world has ever known. Even on regular online forums, you'll come across stories of people breaking through silence. I read one about a woman whose long-term boyfriend ghosted her after 5 years. No explanation, no closure, just radio silence for months. She waited, checked her phone like crazy, and replayed old texts until one day She finally got it. He wasn't coming back. So she decided to move on. She got a promotion at work, started traveling, and built a life so full of joy that she didn't need his words to heal anymore. Her success became her freedom, not because she was trying to prove anything. But since she stopped waiting, you've got that same strength inside you. Their silence doesn't mean it's over for you. It's just the start. It's your opportunity to change your story. Stop hanging around, hoping they'll miss you or get in touch or explain themselves. They won't. They're busy living their lives, and it's time for you to start living yours. Silence, after being pushed away, is only a trap if you make it one. It doesn't mean you weren't good enough, it just shows they never had what it takes. Know your value. Their words won't help you, and their regrets won't either. The only thing that can truly set you free is you. It's time to break out of this silence you've been stuck in. You've waited long enough, replaying memories and feeling empty because of their absence. No more. You're done being a hostage to someone else's choice to leave. You're done waiting for closure that will never happen. You're done letting their silence dictate your worth. From now on, you're taking back control. Stop talking to them and start talking to yourself. Show your strength through your actions and the life you're creating. Break your silence and find your voice. Say it loud, I refuse to be silent. Write it down, own it, and let everyone know your story starts with strength, not silence. You control what comes next. Break free and keep pushing forward. And number 2, pretending that rejection doesn't hurt or acting like you're fine is just like putting on a fresh coat of paint over a crumbling wall. A fresh coat of paint on a falling apart wall might seem solid from far away, but underneath it's still crumbling. You put on a mask, a well-made front of, I'm fine, hoping that if you pretend long enough, the hurt will just disappear. But hiding your feelings doesn't fix them. It just pushes them down deeper where they quietly gnaw at your soul. I get why you do it. You don't want anyone to see how much it really hurts. You think showing pain makes you look weak, exposed, or pitiful, so you fake a smile. Laugh when you want to scream and play it cool like nothing's bothering you. You keep telling yourself, if you look strong, you'll be strong. But let's be real. It's draining, right? The non-stop act, the constant show for a world that has no clue about the struggles you deal with behind the scenes. They've walked away, rejected you, or just moved on. Instead of facing your feelings, you've built this wall to keep it all in. You've gotten so good at hiding your emotions that you've convinced even yourself that you're okay. But emotional pain is like a ticking time bomb. You can only pretend it's not there for so long before it blows up in ways you never saw coming. It creeps into your sleepless nights, that ache you can't put into words, and that empty feeling that no amount of distractions can fill. You might think you're protecting yourself by acting like it doesn't hurt, but all you're doing is postponing the healing. You're stuck in this emotional limbo, caught between what you feel and what you show. The longer you keep up the mask, the more you lose touch with yourself. The hardest part is that no one really sees the real you. They just see the act you put on, and that can feel really lonely. Think about it. How many times have you said, I'm fine, when you were anything but? How often have you gone out with friends, laughed, and acted like everything was okay, only to fall apart the moment you were alone? Pretending you're unbothered doesn't make you strong. It just makes you invisible, even to yourself. Look at real-life stories of resilience. People who didn't pretend to be strong, but they got stronger by tackling their pain directly. Take Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, for example. He's talked openly about his struggles with depression and heartbreak. He didn't act like it didn't hurt. He faced it and used that pain to motivate himself. Then there's Lady Gaga, who has shared her journey of overcoming trauma. She didn't hide behind a mask forever. She chose to heal by embracing her truth instead of hiding it. I remember reading a story on a mental health forum about a young guy who lost his job and his partner in the same month. He pretended everything was fine. Everything seemed fine. He kept posting happy pictures online and convinced himself that showing any weakness would just make things worse. But eventually, he hit rock bottom. Not because of the loss itself, but because of the pressure to act like everything was okay. When he finally admitted he wasn't fine, he found real support, real understanding, and real strength. So please, feel free to open up in the comments. We're all a family here, and we're here to help each other. You don't have to go through this alone. We've got your back. The truth is, healing starts with being honest. Honestly, you can't fix what you're not willing to confront. Pretending everything's fine is like putting a band-aid on an open wound while ignoring the infection underneath. It might look better, but it's only getting worse. Real strength isn't about looking okay. It's about actually being okay in the long run. And that starts with admitting, I'm not fine, but I will be. You don't have to share this with everyone, but you need to be honest with yourself. Acknowledge the pain, let yourself cry, scream, or journal, whatever helps you let go of what you've been holding in. This isn't weakness, it's healing. It's about being real. Be brave enough to confront what hurts so you can finally move on. Pretending it doesn't hurt will just keep you stuck in the past. Admitting that it does is how you break free. It's okay to feel. It's okay to be human. Let yourself be real because that's where the healing starts. So now's the time to drop the mask. Stop acting like you're fine when you're falling apart inside. Don't live for appearances when your heart is screaming for the truth. Feel the pain. Face the storm. It's the only way to find your way through. To get out of this, say it out loud. I refuse to fake it. Write it in the comments, declare it, own it. Let everyone know you choose honesty over putting on a show, healing over pretending, and being real for yourself. Now, let's keep going. Number 3, seeking revenge. Revenge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to feel the pain. After being rejected, the thought of making someone pay for hurting you can feel empowering, like taking back control when you felt helpless. They're regretting what they did, watching you succeed and become everything they thought you couldn't be. Revenge might feel like justice, but it's really just a trap. Chasing after revenge only feeds your bitterness, and that bitterness is like a slow poison that you end up swallowing. The person you want to hurt is likely living their life, completely clueless about your plans, while you're stuck going over old memories, trying to find ways to make them feel your pain. They've moved on, and you're still tied to the past, driven by anger. It just makes your pain worse. I get why you want it. You think if they could see how much you've changed, how much better you are now, they'd regret leaving you. You picture yourself showing up at that party, looking amazing, walking by them with someone new and catching their shocked expressions. Or maybe you dream about building the life they never believed you could, just to rub it in their faces. But here's the reality, they don't care. And even if they did, so what? Their regret doesn't change what happened. Their regret doesn't fix the pain they caused, and living your life just to make them feel something keeps you stuck in their shadow. They're still controlling your emotions. You've just traded sadness for anger. I remember reading a story on a relationship forum about a woman whose partner left her after 10 years for someone younger. She was heartbroken. At first, she fell into a bitter obsession, wanting him to regret leaving her. She spent months comparing herself to his new girlfriend and posting perfect pictures on social media. She was so focused on getting his attention, even though he wasn't paying her any mind. It drove her crazy until she figured out she was still letting him control her life. Once she stopped worrying about what he thought, she created a life that made her happy, and his opinion didn't matter anymore. Her success wasn't about getting back at him, it was about being free. By the time he came back, full of apologies and regret, she didn't even care. You've got to get this. Winning isn't about being better than them. It's about breaking free from them and living your life. Live for yourself, not as a show to make them regret or approve of you. Their opinions don't matter in the bigger picture of your life. Chasing revenge just keeps you stuck in the past and fuels your bitterness, which only hurts you. The best thing you can do isn't to make them wish they had you back. It's to get to a place where you don't miss them anymore. Let it go, not for them, but for your own peace. Stop scheming, stop wishing for their downfall, and stop waiting for them to regret it. Choose peace, not because they deserve it, but because you do. Forgiveness is important, but you deserve to be free. You can't move on while dragging around the heavy chains of resentment. Say it out loud. I let go of the past. Write it in the comments. Own it. You don't need revenge or their regret. All you need is yourself. Now, let's keep going. Number 4. Stop comparing yourself to others. Comparison is a thief. It quietly robs you of your happiness while tricking you into thinking it's motivation. After rejection, it's almost second nature to start comparing yourself. You look at other people, especially the ones they might have picked over you. You scroll through social media, see their perfect moments, and convince yourself that's what you were missing. That's why you weren't good enough. But comparing yourself to others isn't clarity, it's just a path to self-destruction. It's like chasing after something that was never meant for you. This constant comparison makes you feel like there's something wrong with you, like if you were just prettier, smarter, or funnier, things would have turned out differently. So you end up measuring yourself against everyone else. They're with everyone now, and it seems like they forget that what people show the world is hardly the whole story. You're comparing your behind-the-scenes life to someone else's highlight reel, and that's a fight you'll never win. I know what you're thinking. Maybe if I was more like them, they wouldn't have left. You convince yourself that changing who you are will somehow wipe away the rejection and make you better in the ways you think they wanted. But the harsh truth is, you could have been everything they claim to want, and it still wouldn't have mattered. It was never your fault that someone didn't appreciate you. Their choice didn't reflect your worth. It was just about their inability to see what's real. Seriously, think about it. How much time have you spent mindlessly scrolling through social media, torturing yourself by comparing your life to those perfectly staged photos? You see someone traveling the globe, someone in a great relationship, or someone crushing it at work, and you start keeping tabs. But what you don't realize is that behind those snapshots, it's tough dealing with all the stuff nobody sees, the heartbreak, the failures, those sleepless nights. You're looking at someone else's highlight reel and measuring it against your own life, and that's not just unfair, it's damaging. I remember reading about a guy who couldn't stop comparing himself to his ex's new boyfriend. He thought the guy was more successful and outgoing, so it made sense that she picked him. The more he fixated on it, the worse he felt, until one day he woke up and realized that nothing he saw online really mattered. What mattered was his own life. He finally stopped measuring himself against a stranger. He started creating a life he was proud of, and when he finally stopped comparing himself to others, he found peace. Not because he won, but because he stopped competing. Here's the deal. You were never in a competition. You weren't racing against anyone. There's no prize for proving you're better than someone else, Your life is yours, and your journey is one of a kind. Someone else's success, looks, or happiness doesn't take away from your potential. Comparing yourself just keeps you stuck in a loop of self-doubt and makes you blind to everything else you have going for you. Stop asking why it's them and not you. Start asking why it even matters. The only person you should compare yourself to is who you were yesterday. Focus on your growth, your happiness, and your journey. What someone else has or who they chose isn't your story. Your story is still being written. Say this out loud: I choose my path. Write it in the comments, declare it, own it. Stop measuring your worth by someone else's life. Your only competition is you. Now, let's move on to number 5. Don't settle for less. Rejection creates a void inside you, a deep emptiness that keeps telling you you'll never be good enough. In that vulnerable place, desperation sneaks in, making you settle for anything just to feel wanted again. You start accepting scraps, thinking they're love. You lower your standards because being treated poorly feels better than being alone. But settling isn't really surviving, it's betraying yourself. I understand, after rejection, loneliness can feel like too much. You convince yourself that something is better than nothing, but deep down, you know it's not. It's not true. You know it. Every time you let someone back into your life who doesn't appreciate you, you know it. When you make excuses for their half-assed efforts, broken promises, and lack of respect just to avoid another night alone, you get hooked on the idea of being wanted, even if it feels empty. But here's the hard truth. Settling never fills that emptiness. It just makes it worse. Every time you accept less than you deserve, you lose a bit of yourself, your dignity, your self-worth. You think you deserve something real, but the more you settle, the harder it is to escape. You start to believe this is as good as it gets, and that's the lie that keeps you stuck. I remember reading about a woman who kept going back to an ex who was never really there for her. He only reached out when he needed something and showed up when it suited him. She told herself that at least he still cared, but he didn't care about her. He just cared about having her around when it was convenient. She finally reached her breaking point after getting tired of being just an option in his life, and that's when she decided to walk away. When she did, she realized something incredible. Being alone is way better than being used. Stop settling and accepting less just because you're afraid of being by yourself. Yeah, loneliness can sting, but it's only temporary. Self-neglect, though, that sticks around forever. Don't trade your worth for scraps, and don't give up your soul for someone who won't even meet you halfway. You weren't meant to live a life where you're just tolerated instead of truly valued. Treasure this. Say it out loud. I deserve more. Write it in the comments. Own it. You're done settling and making excuses for people who don't appreciate you. You're done accepting less than what your heart really deserves. Now, let's keep going. Number 6. Changing yourself to please others is like hacking away at your own soul just to fit into someone else's little, temporary world. You bend, shrink, and reshape yourself, hoping they'll finally notice you. People say they love you, but the truth is, they never really will if they need you to change or shrink yourself for them. Anyone who makes you feel like you have to be less to be loved doesn't deserve any part of you. Rejection makes you doubt everything. Your looks, your personality, even your worth. You start to wonder if you were too much or not enough, and think about what you can change to make them stick around. You might believe that if you were just funnier, smarter, prettier, or more successful, they'd finally see what they lost. So you end up trying to change yourself, thinking this time they'll love you. But here's the harsh reality. You'll never be enough for the wrong person. They didn't leave because you weren't good enough. They left because they couldn't appreciate someone like you. Let that sink in. No amount of changing will fix their inability to recognize what's real. You could turn into everything they said they wanted, and they'd still find a reason to walk away. Why? Because the problem was never you. It was them. Think about it. How many times have you dimmed your shine just to make someone else comfortable? How many times have you said, "It's fine," when it really wasn't? It wasn't just about not wanting to get too emotional. How many times have you changed how you dress, act, or live just to try to make someone stick around, only for them to leave anyway? I remember reading about a guy who totally transformed himself for his ex. He hit the gym, changed his style, even took a job he hated, thinking it would impress her. For a bit, it worked. She came back. But it wasn't because she loved him, she just loved the new him. Inside, though, he felt hollow. He wasn't really living. He was just being the person she wanted him to be. When she left again, he finally saw that he had lost himself. Stop trying to fit into a shape that isn't you. Stop changing who you are just to be accepted by someone who was never going to stick around. Conditional love isn't real love. It's just manipulation. You're not meant to be edited or fixed. You're meant to be seen for who you are. No apologies needed. Say it out loud. I am enough. Write that in the comments. Own it. You're done trying to fit into someone else's shallow expectations. You're done being a version of yourself just to make others comfortable. You are enough just as you are. Now, let's keep going. Number 7, becoming emotionally numb or shutting down. They sell you this fake idea of strength that says you should stay strong by feeling nothing. It teaches you to push everything down, shut yourself off, and build walls so high that nothing can hurt you again. But that's not real strength. Numbness isn't strength. It's just being stuck. It's like slowly losing the ability to feel anything: joy, love, connection, or even life itself. I understand that after being rejected, shutting down seems like the only way to cope. The pain can be overwhelming, so you put up walls and vow to protect yourself from getting hurt again. You tell yourself that if you don't feel anything, you can't be hurt. But by numbing the bad, you end up dulling the good too. You can't block out pain and still expect to feel love, peace, or happiness. Numbness takes everything away. You go through life feeling like a shell of who you really are. You smile because people expect it, and you say you're fine because it's simpler than sharing the emptiness you feel inside. But you know what's worse than heartbreak? Feeling absolutely nothing. Numbness is the harshest kind of rejection, but it just leaves you feeling alone. You pull away, not just from the people around you, but from yourself too. Think about how many times you've ignored your real feelings by brushing them off with, "It doesn't matter," or "I don't care." How many relationships have you kept at a distance because getting close felt too risky? It's too risky. Think about all the chances at happiness you've skipped because you figured, why bother? It won't last. I remember reading a story on a mental health forum about a woman who went through a brutal breakup. She told herself she'd never let anyone get that close again. She buried her feelings so deep that even her friends thought she was really strong, but inside, she was just frozen. Years went by, and even when she met someone kind and loving, she couldn't let her guard down. She realized she hadn't really protected herself. She'd locked herself away. True Stoicism isn't about shutting down. It's about being open while still standing strong. It's not about feeling nothing. It's about taking it all in and still choosing to move forward. The Stoics didn't teach us to be numb. They taught us to be resilient. They showed us how to feel the pain without letting it control us, to face tough times with courage instead of running away. Feeling is what makes us human. Healing happens when you stop avoiding your emotions and start embracing them. Ditch the idea that being numb is something to be proud of. Acting like you're unbothered doesn't make you strong. What really makes you strong is your ability to feel and heal. Rising again after being vulnerable isn't a sign of weakness. It's actually freedom. Say it out loud. I choose to feel. Write it in the comments. Declare it. Own it. You're done being emotionally numb and hiding behind walls that keep both the world and yourself at bay. Feel everything and rise anyway. And let's keep this going. Number 8. Hiding your light. They told you to tone it down, to be less loud, less sensitive, less passionate, less yourself. Over time, you listened and started dimming your light little by little, thinking maybe it would make things easier. You can't force someone to love you by pretending to be someone you're not. Hiding your true self is like caging the best parts of you just to fit into someone else's shallow life. You might think that if you play it smaller, quieter, or simpler, you'll be more lovable or accepted. But in the end, you just lose who you are. The people who want you to change like that, they weren't the right ones for you. Seriously, how many times have you toned yourself down just to avoid standing out? How many times have you kept quiet when you wanted to speak up, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, or pretended to care about stuff that bored you to death just to fit in? You thought if you went along with it, maybe they'd finally notice you. But pretending to be someone you're not doesn't build connections. It just leaves you feeling empty. I remember reading about a young woman who spent years changing herself for her partner. He didn't like that she was artistic and sensitive, so she hid away her art supplies. She acted like she loved his hobbies, but really she couldn't stand deep conversations. So she kept her feelings bottled up until they nearly choked her. She thought if she changed just one more thing about herself, he'd finally love her. But no matter how much she tried to erase who she was, it was never enough. One day, she stumbled upon an old sketchbook tucked away in a box she hadn't opened in ages. As she flipped through the pages, she realized she didn't even recognize the vibrant, passionate person she used to be. That's when it hit her. It's better to be alone and true to yourself. Being yourself instead of pretending for others doesn't bring love. It just breeds resentment. It puts up a barrier between who you really are and who people think you are. And eventually, that wall gets so thick that you might even forget who you are. You end up living for approval that never truly satisfies you, because deep down, you know they're not loving the real you. They're loving the mask you wear. Look at some of the most iconic figures in history, like Frida Kahlo, who refused to hide their true selves even when the world told them to tone it down. Kahlo openly shared her pain and passion through her art, even when people said she was too emotional and intense. Think of Robin Williams, who brought laughter to the world while fighting his own demons. In his real moments, he connected with millions on a deep level. Their legacies weren't about fitting in. They were about being completely themselves, even when it scared them or made others uncomfortable, or when the world told them to tone it down. There's a quote by Marianne Williamson that really resonates with this. Our biggest fear isn't that we're not good enough. It's that we're way more powerful than we think. Holding back doesn't just shield you from being rejected. It also keeps others from feeling small next to your greatness. But seriously, why should you feel bad for shining your light? Quit dulling your shine just to make insecure people comfortable. Stop changing who you are to fit into places that were never meant for you. The right people won't feel threatened by your true self. They'll be attracted to it. They're gonna celebrate it. I know you've been hurt, and rejection made you feel like being your true self was too much. But let me tell you something real. You were never too much. They just weren't enough to handle what you bring to the table. Their inability to value you says everything about them and nothing about you. Think about the times you felt most alive, when you were unapologetically you, laughing too loud, dreaming too big, loving too hard. That real version of you is still there. It's time to stop hiding them under layers. Stop letting fear and insecurity hold you back. It's time to let out the real you, the one who feels intensely, lives life to the fullest, and loves without holding back. The truth is, the world needs the whole you, not some toned-down version. We need the you that has big dreams, deep emotions, and a light that can't be dimmed. Don't waste another minute hiding behind a mask just to fit in with people who won't appreciate your value. Stop holding back and start living. Your light was meant to shine bright. People who are meant for you can't help but notice you. Say it out loud. I'm done hiding. Write it in the comments. Own it. No more shrinking, no more hiding, no more apologizing for being yourself. Your light is meant to shine, and from now on, it will. So let's keep pushing forward. Remember, rejection isn't the end. It's just a wake-up call. It's tough, but it makes you face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding or doubting. You've been hurt, ignored, and overlooked, but you're still here. You're still here, and that means you've got the strength to rise up, heal, and be unstoppable. You're done waiting for closure that's never coming. You're done shrinking yourself just to fit in. You're done living in someone else's shadow. From now on, you're taking back control and rewriting your own story. Say this out loud. I rise, I reclaim, I become. Now it's time to pay it forward. If this message resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Someone else needs this reminder just as much as you did. Drop a comment to let them know they're not alone, and while you're at it, hit that like button to help spread the word. Subscribe so you always remember who you are and who you're becoming. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their worth. Now, keep rising, and we'll catch you in the next video.